The night was alive with laughter, music, and the smell of roasted beef drifting through the Silver Spur saloon. Cowboys slammed their cards on the table, ale splashed, and someone plucked a banjo by the corner stove. It was just another Friday in Dusty Creek, a town where gossip traveled faster than tumbleweeds. Among the rowdy crowd sat Jake Callahan, the proud owner of the Lazy Sea Ranch. He was tall, rugged, and had that lazy smile that made women blush and men shake their heads. Jake was a man who prided himself on his word, and, more importantly, on his luck at poker. Tonight, that luck ran out. "Callahan, you're all in or you fold," laughed Sam Porter, a slick ranch hand with a grin too big for his face. "What's it gonna be, Cowboy?" Jake's hand hovered over his cards. He could feel every eye in the saloon fixed on him. He'd been on a losing streak, and his pride wouldn't let him walk away. "All in," Jake said finally, pushing his last stack of chips into the pot. The cards fell, one by one. The crowd leaned forward. When Sam flipped his final card, the saloon erupted in cheers and gasps. Jake's jaw tightened. He'd lost, and not just money. Sam leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Well now, Jake, we made a deal, didn't we?" Jake glared. "You're really gonna make me do this?" Sam chuckled. "A bet's a bet, partner. You said if you lost, you'd marry the first woman who walks through that door." Laughter filled the room. Men slapped their knees. Women giggled behind their hands. Jake Callahan, the most eligible cowboy in town, forced to marry a stranger? It was unthinkable. But just as the laughter peaked, the saloon doors creaked open. A gust of cold air blew in, along with the faint scent of rain and roses. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway, tall, cloaked in dusty brown, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing her face. Her clothes were simple, travel-worn, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. Jake froze. Sam's grin widened. "Well, there's your bride, Callahan." The woman stepped forward slowly. Her eyes, green like the edge of a storm, met Jake's. "Did I interrupt something?" she asked softly. The saloon went silent. Sam slapped Jake's back. "Not at all, miss. My friend here was just saying he's looking for a wife." Her brow arched. "Is that so?" Jake sighed. "It's complicated." The crowd howled with laughter again, urging him on. Someone yelled, "Go on, Jake! Keep your word!" Jake stood, his pride burning hotter than his embarrassment. "Ma'am, this is ridiculous." "You don't owe me a thing," the woman interrupted. "You're a man of your word, aren't you, Mr. Callahan?" The way she said his name made his pulse skip. He nodded slowly. "Then I accept," she said simply. The room exploded with shock. The next morning, Dusty Creek gathered outside the small white church. Jake stood at the altar in his best suit, still trying to convince himself this was real. The stranger, who introduced herself only as Evelyn, stood beside him, calm and composed. She wore a simple cream dress borrowed from the general store. No family, no friends, no questions. The preacher cleared his throat, clearly puzzled but too polite to refuse. "Do you, Jacob Callahan, take this woman to be your lawful wife?" Jake hesitated, glancing at Evelyn. She met his gaze steadily. "I do," he said finally. "And do you, Evelyn, take this man to be your lawful husband?" "I do," she replied. When the preacher declared them man and wife, whispers rippled through the crowd. No one clapped. No one knew what to say. Jake turned to Evelyn, ready to apologize for the farce, but she surprised him again. She leaned in, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "A promise is a promise, Cowboy." That afternoon, Jake brought her to the Lazy Sea Ranch. His ranch hands stared, their mouths open. "She's staying in the guest room," Jake muttered. "Until we figure things out." Evelyn smiled faintly. "That's kind of you," but she wasn't helpless like he expected. Within a day, she'd organized the kitchen, mended 3 shirts, and had the ranch hands eating better than they had in months. When the mare in the stable went into labor, Evelyn was the first to rush in. "Hot water, clean towels," she commanded, like she'd done it all her life. The men obeyed her without question. By nightfall, a healthy foal stood wobbly on new legs, and the men were calling her Mrs. Callahan with respect. Jake watched from the doorway, his pride softening. "You know your way around animals?" Evelyn wiped her hands. "You could say that. I used to have a ranch once." "You did?" She nodded, her eyes distant. "Until it was taken from me." Jake didn't ask more. Something in her tone warned him not to. As weeks passed, the story of the Bet marriage spread through every corner of the county. Most expected Evelyn to leave once she realized Jake hadn't meant it seriously. But she stayed. The townsfolk noticed how she carried herself, refined, graceful, educated. Not like any drifter. One evening, the mayor himself rode up to the ranch. "Jake, may I have a word with your wife?" he asked carefully. Evelyn stepped forward, smiling politely. "Of course, Mayor," he cleared his throat. "Forgive me, ma'am, but your face seems familiar. You wouldn't happen to be from the Harrington family, would you?" The name hit Jake like a jolt. The Harringtons were one of the wealthiest families in the state, their fortune built on cattle and railroads. Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Not anymore," she said quietly. "I stopped being a Harrington a long time ago." The mayor blinked, clearly startled. "Well, my apologies, Mrs. Callahan." He tipped his hat and left. Jake turned to her. "You're telling me you're from that family?" Evelyn sighed. My father died in debt. Our ranch was sold off, everything gone." "People think wealth lasts forever. It doesn't." Jake studied her in silence. Suddenly her calm confidence, her skill with horses, her manners, they all made sense. She wasn't just some stranger. She was a woman rebuilding her life from ashes. Winter came early that year. The ranch was quiet under a blanket of snow. Jake and Evelyn had fallen into a rhythm. She cooked and kept the books. He worked the herds. But what surprised Jake most was how much he'd come to rely on her presence. Her laughter in the kitchen, her calm advice when storms came, it felt like home. One night as the wind howled outside, Evelyn sat by the fireplace sewing. Jake poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from her. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked quietly. She looked up. "Do you want me to?" "No," he said quickly. Then softer. "Not anymore." Her smile warmed the room. "Then I guess I'll stay." For the first time, Jake realized that what started as a foolish bet had become something real, something he didn't want to lose. Just when life began to settle, a black carriage rolled up to the ranch one morning. Out stepped a man in a fine coat and gold watch, Charles Harrington, Evelyn's estranged cousin. He sneered when he saw Jake. "So it's true. The runaway married a cowboy." Jake stiffened. "Watch your tone, mister." Charles ignored him and turned to Evelyn. "Father left something for you. A share of the old Harrington estate. But only if you annul this marriage. It's beneath the family name." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "Beneath?" Charles smirked. "Come home, Evelyn. Leave this life behind. You don't belong here." Jake waited for her answer, heart pounding. Evelyn took a deep breath. "You're right, Charles," she said slowly. Jake's chest tightened. "But I don't belong there either," she finished. "This is my home now. With my husband." The words hit Jake harder than any bullet. Charles's face darkened. "You'll regret this." Evelyn smiled faintly. "No, I already did once." "Never again." He stormed off, leaving the ranch quiet once more. Jake turned to her, speechless. She met his gaze. "You don't lose what you truly love, Jake. You choose it." He reached for her hand. "Then I'm the luckiest fool who ever lost a bet." Months later, word spread like wildfire. Evelyn Callahan had revived the old Harrington breeding stock, using her knowledge and Jake's ranching skills. Together they built a new empire, one that rivaled her family's fortune. The same people who mocked their bet marriage now spoke their names with awe. But for Jake and Evelyn, none of that mattered. They'd found something no money or status could buy: trust, respect, and love born from an accident of fate. One quiet evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, Jake leaned on the fence beside her. "You ever think about that night in the saloon?" he asked. Evelyn laughed softly. "Every now and then. Think you'd still have said yes?" She turned to him, eyes glimmering in the fading light. "I think I was meant to walk through that door." Jake smiled, pulling her close. "Guess some bets are worth losing." And as the stars came out over Dusty Creek, everyone who once laughed at the cowboy and the stranger could see it now. Some stories don't start with love. They stumble into it by chance, by pride, and by a promise that changes everything.